Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, Certificate Programs, Certificate in Nutrition and Child Care, CNCC, CNCC-2 Organizing Child Care Services, Block for the Child, Development During Preschool Years. Unit-19, Enhancing Language Skills. 19.1 Introduction. In the last block, you read about the language skills of a toddler. You learned that the child, during toddlerhood, begins to use words meaningfully and to speak in sentences. In this unit, you will read about the development of language during the preschool years. The unit will discuss how the preschooler's vocabulary increases, how she begins to use the rules of grammar, and how she uses language for various purposes. A remarkable achievement of this period is that the child sees the link between the printed picture or word and spoken language and begins to learn to read and write. In this unit, we will also talk about the skills that lead to the learning of reading and writing. You have been reading in blocks 2 and 3 about language development of infants and toddlers respectively. You should note that the specific norms and characteristics of development described in these blocks hold true for the English language only. It is true that all children cry, coo, babble and then speak in two-word sentences, later in telegraphic speech and finally go on to speaking in complete sentences irrespective of the language they learn. But the order of learning the rules for constructing sentences will be different depending on the grammar of the language. Thus the examples mentioned in these blocks cannot be translated to stand for enolfs in another language. Additionally, the milestones of development mentioned are based on averages. There is a wide range of variation in children in language learning and language use. Objectives. After studying this unit, you will be able to times list the language skills that a child learns in preschool years. Times describe how the child in the age group of 3 to 6 years uses language. Times list the pre-reading and pre-writing skills that the preschooler learns. Times understand the importance of pre-reading and pre-writing skills for literacy. Times learn about the factors that influence language development. Times discuss the special role of the caregiver in fostering language development. Times identify some speech problems that are common in childhood years and discuss their causes. 19.2 Language skills of the preschool child. You are aware that before children are of preschool age they are already using words for communicating. They can identify and combine sounds to make words, use a sizable vocabulary and follow some rules of grammar to make sentences. You may then want to ask what the preschooler learns that makes her different from the toddler or how the preschooler's speech is different from an earlier stage. The preschooler uses more words and speaks in longer sentences. As a result of her increasing cognitive abilities, she begins to think of what she is saying. She now looks at language as an important tool for communication and thinks of the right way to communicate. This is clear from the observations of children which show them stopping in mid-sentence to rephrase their sentences or correct themselves. They repeat a word, use an alternative word or rephrase their sentence. For example, I want to toffee many toffee. I want to go home. Give my toy. That toy is mine. If you spend some time listening to the speech of preschoolers, you will notice that in contrast to toddlers, they use longer sentences. They are also able to arrange words in different sequences to form sentences of different grammatical constructions and to construct them with greater flexibility. Nonverbal cues are also an important part of communication. In toddlerhood, the child is dependent on them to convey her meaning. As the child grows older, conversation becomes increasingly dependent on words. There is a shift from the dependence on cues to the use of symbols. By symbols we mean words, numbers or pictures that are used for communicating thoughts or feelings. Words may refer to specific objects or actions or they may be symbolic representations for concepts. Gestures and the tone of the voice are cues that provide information about what is being said. To illustrate this point, Let us read the following example. A 2-year-old child will point to a ball lying on the shelf and say, "Mummy ball." The intonation, the content and the gesture reveal to the mother that the child wants the ball. The 6-year-old child on the other hand will look at his mother and say, "Mummy, I want the ball on the shelf." The words of the preschooler convey the complete meaning of what she wants to say. She is not dependent on a gesture to convey her meaning. The use of symbols, whether near words or pictures, characterize true language. The ability of understanding the many kinds of symbols, a word, a letter, a number, a picture, develops further in the preschool years. You read in the last block that the toddler is sometimes unable to pronounce a few sounds. By the time the child is of preschool age, she masters some of these sounds, but even then she may not be able to pronounce all the sounds well. Research reveals that the sounds with which the preschooler may have problems are sh, eth, f, z, and as in the words shift, thing, fleur, zebra, and simple, respectively. This is because these are difficult sounds to produce. 19.2. 1. Increase in vocabulary. You have read that children know many more words than they use in their speech. If you think carefully, you will realize that you also understand many more words than you use in your day-to-day speech. Detailed research in the area has revealed that when children are about 4 years of age, they can on an average use 1,200 words in their speech and are able to understand a much larger number of words. Between the period of 4 to 6 years, they acquire a larger vocabulary which contains 12,000 to 14,000 words. After learning to say the word, the child has to learn to use it in the way it is generally used. To do so, the child needs to be familiar with the usage of the word. For example, the use of the words me and I. As we know, both the words are used to signify the self, but their usage is different. For example, "One don't like this toy, give that book to me." The child has to learn that I cannot be used in the second sentence. There is a direct relationship between the child's growing vocabulary and her rapidly developing cognitive abilities. In addition to knowing how a word is used, the child must also understand the concept of which the word is a symbol. The understanding of the word is thus related to the understanding of the concept. Research findings show that in the normal course of growth, children are able to find and use the right word only when they have understood the concept. Children in preschool years are able to use and understand words that make comparisons between two objects or people, i.e., comparative terms, such as larger, shorter, less, etc. Initially, when a child hears the words being used in reference to a particular object in a situation, she may use lie words only in lie identical way. Later the generalization to other situations follows. By 3 years of age a child is able to sort objects into two categories, for example, big and small. Gradually children learn to use words that convey this contrast. Research shows that in the usage of such words that signify a contrast, like big small, same different, the child can get confused if the difference is only minor. Shown a picture of a pencil and a bird, two objects that are very different to look at, the child will say they are different. But if the child is shown a picture which has two similar looking things, there is a probability of confusion. For example, if shown a picture of a horse and a donkey and asked if they are the same or different, the child may say that they are the same, because both have 4 legs, a tail and other common features. This is because she is not able to deal with the fact that there are similarities, but there are also differences between the two. You have read in Unit 18 that the child is not able to take into account two different aspects at the same time. Thus we see that the ability to use language is dependent on the child's cognitive development. In preschool years, children also become aware of the concept of space. They comprehend that everything around them occupies space. This understanding helps them to correctly interpret and use words that signify location, i.e., words like here, there, and below above. However, to be able to use words that signify location, the child has to be able to understand the other person's perspective. For example, in a sentence, words like here or there may be spoken from the point of reference of the speaker or of the listener. The child has to understand that the location implied by the word here normally means closer to the speaker. In other sentences where phrases like go there and come here are used, the child has to know that go and come signify movement. Take another situation where the child is asked to take this toy or bring that book. In this context, they have to be able to understand that they can move objects from one place to another, according to the words here and there, i.e., they can cause things to happen. As they begin to develop an understanding of the concepts of space, movement and causation, they begin to use location words like here, there and in front of, behind. This happens when the child is 3 years of age. Later in the preschool years, the child is better able to follow sentences and instructions like this is yours and that is Seema's, and put the ball there. By 4 years of age, the child does not confuse the words that signify location. However, research conducted to study the ability of preschool children to use location words has shown that if a sentence is constructed in a way which sounds improbable, the child is likely to reconstruct it to make meaning. For example, the sentence, "The floor vase is under the television," may be wrongly repeated as, "The floor vase is on the television," by the child, who is trying to make sense out of the sentence. From the above discussion, it is clear that the child's understanding of concepts and her vocabulary develop together. 19th February 2002, Understanding Language Rules. You would have learned from the preceding subsection that the child's vocabulary increases manifold in the preschool years. Children, at this age, are also able to construct longer and more complex sentences. The 4-year-old's sentences are usually shorter than those of a 5 or 6-year-old. You have read in Unit 18 about the development of the concepts of time, space, number, shape, etc. The understanding of these concepts helps language development, as you will see in this section. As the child understands the concept of time, she begins to use tenses precisely. Using the past or the present tense requires adding ed or ing to words. As you know, the child learns this general rule between 2 and 3 years of age. She adds these suffixes to words, constructing words like eated. You also know from the last block that children make mistakes of underextension and overgeneralization. Only later do they learn the specific endings for and usages of different words. The use of the future tense in speech comes later than the past and present tenses. The immediate past in the child's actual experience is remembered more readily. Being able to use the future tense appropriately, on the other hand, involves thinking, anticipating and planning ahead. It also requires the ability to use language as a means of thinking out problems and ideas. You read in Block 3 that the toddler can relate past events. However, occasionally it is difficult for the preschool child to talk of an event that happened some time earlier. For example, if a child is asked to tell what she did in school the last month, she may not be able to do so. This is not because the child does not understand the question. The child is being asked to use language to recall events verbally. She has to depend on her memory. If asked to relate an event from their immediate experiences, children can do so more easily. Some cues will also help to reconstruct the action that happened a while ago. Additionally, an event is remembered if it has slim special meaning for the child. As we know from our own experiences, an event of special importance is often related easily. Take tile example of Rohik. One day while his mother was using the mixer grinder, mixie, for grinding chutney, he was watching her. She finished the job, opened the lid of the jar and looked at the chutney. Satisfied with the result, she went to the shelf to pick up a bottle to store it. Wanting to try out the grinder, Rohit pressed the button and switched it on. The chutney flew all around the kitchen, getting splattered on the walls and floor. Rohit's mother ran towards the switch to put it off, slipped on the floor and got hurt. Rohit, anticipating the scolding, ran out of the kitchen, and was scolded by his father and grandmother. This incident was remembered by Rohit even a month after it happened. The scar on the mother's elbow which she got from the fall was a reminder of the incident for Rohit. It is only when children are 4 to 4.5 years of age that they use future tense appropriately. However, children sometimes do get confused about the tenses even till 8 to 10 years of age. 6-year-old Sunana was heard saying at a gathering, "When I come the last time, we will sing the same song." On being told that she should say, "next time," and not, "last time," she repeated, "next time." In toddlerhood the child uses, "no," to communicate her unwillingness, for example, "no doggy," or "no, no milk," or just says, "no." In the preschool years, the child is able to construct negative sentences. This is because now she acquires words like cannot, will not, and is not, to express dissent. With the help of these words she can construct sentences like, "I don't like it." However, the preschool child may produce double negatives as in the sentence, "I don't want nothing." Later the child is able to speak negative sentences that have words like any, much, and enough, that help to qualify them. For example, "I won't do anything," "I don't like this ball much," and "this is not enough." This is because these words represent a notion of quantity that takes time to develop. In the preschool years, children are also able to follow various kinds of questions, i.e., questions that use what, when, why, how, where, and help to seek information. You know that when children are 2 to 3 years old, they can only respond to questions that require yes or no answers and to what and where questions. When toddlers are asked when, how, and why questions, they answer as if they have been asked what or where. For example, Samina, when asked, "Why are you eating that?" said, "It's an apple," as if she had been asked, "What are you eating?" Along with what and where questions, the preschooler is also able to answer when, how, and why questions appropriately. The ability to understand and answer when questions comes after what and why because it requires an understanding of the concept of time which begins to develop only in the preschool years. Between the 3rd and the 4th birthday, children begin to understand the figurative or non-literal meaning of phrases, i.e., they can understand the intended meaning in sentences. For example, when the mother says in a complaining tone, "Oh, my back is breaking," the child understands that the mother is implying that her back is hurting and not actually breaking. This gets enhanced towards the end of the preschool period as they prepare to enter school. Some of the phrases that are figurative in nature are called similes, metaphors and irony. By the age of 6 years, some children are able to understand these forms of language rather well, and even use them occasionally. Let us go through the following paragraphs for more details. Similes draw a similarity between two things, people, objects, etc. In these sentences the words such as like and as are used. For example, you run like a rabbit. In this sentence, the person is comparing the speed or the style of running and thus using the phrase running like a rabbit. Such sentences are understood by preschoolers. When the child is climbing trees or jumping over furniture and is told, "You are as naughty as a monkey. Just see the way you jump around," the child understands the meaning and enjoys being compared to a monkey. She will also see the humor in it and laugh. Phrases that do not use the words as and like, but draw a similarity by implication between two things are metaphors. For example, "He is chicken-hearted, don't be a monkey," she is a lamb, etc. Children follow that these sentences also have a non-literal meaning. Ironical phrases, i.e., which say something totally opposite to the context, are also understood by preschoolers. Take the example of Nandi. She was to go for a picnic with her parents. When the day arrived, they saw that it was raining hard and their plans were ruined. Nandi's mother then said, "What beautiful weather! We will definitely have a lovely picnic today." Nandi, looking at the rain, understood the irony and said, "Can we go another day, mummy?" Box 19.1 Humor. Oh, you have just read that in late preschool years children begin to understand non-literal meanings of sentences and may even find them funny. However, preschoolers are not able to understand jokes based on wordplay. This requires an ability to understand that a word can have two meanings, and generally, at that age, a particular word has only one meaning for children. They are, on the other hand, able to appreciate the humor in situations and events that are improbable or situations that show an absurd combination of events, objects, etc. Take the example of 6-year-old Vishal. He was looking at a comic and was in splits of laughter. His aunt, surprised that he was able to understand the comic, asked him what he was laughing at. He pointed out the following picture. The understanding of figurative speech is dependent on many aspects, including the context. For example, if it is a very hot day and the person says, "Oh, it's so hot, I am going to melt," the child may take the sentence seriously. On the other hand, if it is a very cold day, and the adult says, "On a day so warm, I could drink a gallon of water," the child will note that it is a very cold day and the adult is saying something not true. She will understand that the sentence is factually incorrect and thus assume that the adult must have been implying non-literal meaning. You would have understood from the example given above that children are able to understand irony and metaphor when they are able to go beyond fact. This is generally understood only by the time they are 7 years old. They are now able to see things from others' perspectives, and to put it in context. You would have seen that while talking of language, the development of the skills has been explained in relation to cognitive abilities. This is because there is a close relation between the two. Words and sentences spoken by children should not be judged in terms of adult language standards. A study of the development of language and thought together with provide information about the development of language skills.
You are listening to this audiobook on Audio Learn IGNOU. 19th February 2003, Pre-reading and Pre-writing Skills. Reading and writing begin to take shape when the child is in the preschool years. The child wants to write her name, draw a flower, read a story and so on. 5-year-old Tony picked up a paper bag from the floor. The bag had a colorful picture and something printed on it. He went up to his 12-year-old cousin and said, "Should I tell you a story?" She asked, "Which story are you going to tell?" Till then Tony pointed to the picture and said, "This one." His cousin agreed. He then proceeded to make up a story. Children see letters, numbers and pictures in books, magazines, newspapers, hoardings on the streets, TV, paper bags which are used to carry back purchases from the market, etc. Such experiences in which children get an opportunity to interpret the meaning of pictures and letters, help them to become familiar with and discriminate letters. Children also develop the skill of interpreting given information. Their experiences enable them to accumulate a fund of recognizable material that will help make sense of what is written or printed. In the preschool years, children develop an awareness about language. They begin to think of what they are saying, and learn that sentences can be constructed by the flexible use of words. An awareness that words are made of sounds also develops. These skills help them to learn to read. Children now also being to use written symbols, i.e., drawings like circles, squares, lines and scribbles to signify same object, thought or concept. Therefore, at this juncture, it becomes vital to provide opportunities that will help them to learn skills which will finally lead to reading and writing, i.e., provide opportunities to foster pre-reading and pre-writing skills. Pre-reading and pre-writing skills are those which the child needs to learn before she goes on to reading and writing. The skills that would be required before the child can read and write are as follows. The children should have the ability to times control eye movement, as the activity of reading requires rapid movement of the eyes. Times control the movement of the fingers and wrist to hold the crayon, chalk or pencil and the book, and turn pages, etc. Times see the minute differences in shapes such as A and F, or a square and a rectangle. Times associate sounds with shapes. Times combine sounds, for example, E, C, etc. as in car, cell, respectively. Times understand part to whole relationship, which is essential to understand that letters are combined to form words and words are put together to form sentences. Times understand the meaning of invariance, to understand that letters and words, even if written in a different color or size, remain the same and are sounded the same way. Times pay attention to a particular task for some time, i.e., have an adequate attention span. Times remember and classify objects and events. Times understand the concepts of right and left and up and down, as these help to develop reading and writing skills. To foster the development of these skills, it is important to provide opportunities for learning them. Many games can be organized for children that will further the learning of pre-reading and pre-writing skills. These games helps in language development and are generally enjoyed by children. However, it is important to remember that the skills for these tasks actually develop from infancy and toddlerhood itself. To illustrate, when the infants learn to differentiate between sounds that are alike, they are learning a skill that will finally help them to differentiate between two similar sounding words like dog and log. Thus, they will gradually learn to identify that the sounds d and I are what make the words different and og makes them sound similar. In this way they learn to use symbols, i.e., letters. You will read more about the activities for fostering these skills in Block 5. Apart from providing the opportunities for developing the skills mentioned here, another important task for the caregiver is to draw the child's attention towards the printed word and to motivate the child to read. Some children are exposed to the world of print in their own homes. Take the example of Sonu and Mamta. 3-year-old Sonu's parents go to work in the morning and his older sister goes to school. On some days he goes with his mother to her place of work and on others his sister carries him to school. He says here reading new, writing. As she studies in school, he scribbles in the sand with the stick or with her pencil on the notebook. He wants to write his name, draw pictures and do all the other things that she does. At home, she also reads stories to him from hooks. He has begun to understand that there is a link between the book and the story and wants to read and write. Mamta, on the other hand, stays at home with her grandmother as her parents work at the construction site where her father drives the road roller and her mother helps in other work. She does not have experiences with books or pencils. She plays in the sand or with pebbles on the roadside while her parents work. She is also learning pre-reading and pre-writing skills, as she makes a house from clay. As sight plays, she is developing fine new tour skills. She is, however, not aware of the link between spoken and printed language and may not have a strong motivation to read and write. In most preschools, the emphasis is on teaching children to recognize and write numbers and alphabets. Most parents also expect that a preschool will teach their child numbers and letters so that they are able to seek admission in a school. While it is not wrong to emphasize the learning of these concepts, we have to keep in mind that before going on to learning, reading and writing, the child has to be able to do all the tasks that we have mentioned till now as pre-reading and pre-writing skills. The child must have the readiness for reading and writing, and must want to learn to read and write. 19.3 Using language, the function third. Let us now see how the preschooler uses her language skills and as a result how she becomes more efficient at using language for a variety of purposes. Language primarily helps to communicate our thoughts and ideas, establish and maintain social contact and relationships, and finally to understand society and culture. Initially, children are not able to use language for all these purposes, but as they grow, their language skills improve. In Unit 14, Block 3 you read how the toddler uses language. You would remember that the toddler expresses her needs and feelings, gives information, makes judgments, asks questions, and directs her own actions with the help of language. All these functions hold true for the preschool years also. The preschool child becomes more efficient at all these tasks, and in addition, uses language for other purposes as well. In the preschool years, talking accompanies almost all the activities of children. As children play, they may be talking to themselves, commenting on what they are doing. You read in the last block that this speech serves to guide children's actions. Research has shown that, initially, when children first learn to speak, their comments come after the activity, as 2-year-olds can do only one thing at a time. If a 2-year-old is doing something and an adult gives directions, she will be distracted. Later on, this is not difficult for children. They are able to listen to the directions and include them in their activity. In other words, they are able to integrate verbal directions with an activity. At 2.5 to 3.5 years, children can be helped by simple verbal directions immediately preceding an activity. Being able to integrate verbal directions with an activity leads to the ability to use language to direct one's own activity. This happens by 3.5 years. When children enter preschool years, they begin to direct their own activity verbally. They talk of what they are about to do. By the time children are 4.5 to 5 years, i.e., towards the end of preschool years, language begins to get internalized. They do not have to always speak their thoughts aloud when they do something. In preschool years, this ability is developing and children are not very skilled at it. Only when they are about 8 to 9 years old, planning becomes a part of their thought. They do not have to speak aloud to direct their actions. As children are now able to use language efficiently, they use thinking to plan their activities instead of relying only on the method of trial and error. You know that cognitive and language development help and strengthen each other. Language provides labels for cognitive concepts. In preschool years, when the child learns these labels, they help her to classify events and objects. Language this helps in the classification of events and objects. Children in preschool years also use language to express their fantasy. They will tell colorful stories. Sometimes while listening to these tales, adults may feel that children are lying. However, children may be confused between reality and fantasy. In a way, they are experimenting and exploring their language skills. They use these skills to relate imaginary tales. If they narrate a story heard before, they are able to tell the story in the right sequence, with a beginning, a middle, and an end. There is a lot of action and many characters appear and disappear in this story. Others listening to the narration may find it difficult to follow the action as there may be excessive and confusing activity. However, the stories told by children often reflect their way of thinking and dealing with situations. Language serves very important social functions in that it allows us to direct another person's attention towards ourselves, communicate thoughts, and make friends. Conversation helps us to get to know people and make friends with them. The preschooler uses various techniques to begin and continue conversation. You read in the last block in Unit 14 that children ask questions as a device for continuing a dialogue, i.e., as a conversational device. In preschool years, along with this technique, children also narrate their activities of the day before, plans of the future, happenings in the family, and talk about their possessions, e.g., toys, games, etc. They tell a story to begin and continue conversation. With the development of social skills, the child in preschool years uses language to form relationships with others and to maintain social contact. This can be seen in their interactions with others. If you have had the opportunity to observe preschoolers interacting with children younger than them, you would have seen that 4-year-old children modify their speech while speaking to younger children. Research reveals that the speech of theirs is different from that which they use while speaking to adults. Preschoolers are not just imitating adults. It is possible that they realize the linguistic limitation of their listener and thus modify their speech. With increasing age, they become better at using a different kind of speech with younger children. The speech of preschoolers is also different when they speak with their peers than when they speak with adults. When they want something from their parents, the tone of their voice is different from when they are playing with peers and fighting over a toy. Children use language in a variety of ways to form relationships and maintain social contact. 19.4 Factors influencing language development. You would be able to recall that in Block 1, we discussed in detail the influences of heredity and environment on development. The conclusion at the end of the discussion was that heredity and environment interact to influence the development of skills in all areas, be it the development of language, cognitive, physical, or social skills. In this section, we are going to read further about the factors that influence language development. This will help us to understand the factors that contribute to the learning of language skills. If we decide to learn a new language now, we will require a considerable amount of formal training and guidance. Children, on the other hand, learn to speak without any formal training. How does the child accomplish this remarkable feat? Let us examine the various aspects in detail to obtain an insight into the process of learning language. You read in blocks 1 and 2 that it seems that the child has an innate ability to learn language. You also know from your reading of this block and earlier blocks that the child's skills in other areas, mainly the cognitive and social skills, help her to learn language. Many cognitive abilities are required in language learning. For example, understanding the concepts and learning to use words as symbols and remembering them are important abilities. Language and the development of concepts go together, each helping in the progress of the other. Social skills also help in language development. Normally, in preschool year the child interacts with more people than before. By talking to others, she learns to use language more effectively. The social interactions have a direct impact on the learning of language. Adults also have a powerful influence on the vocabulary of the child and her fluency in speaking. They help the child to acquire concepts and attach words to these concepts. Children imitate them and are reinforced to learn more when their efforts are rewarded. People around the child create an environment which aids in language learning. Their language use is suitable for the child's level. You may have noticed that parents make a special effort to talk in a manner that children understand. Children's language development also depends on how the mother caregiver encourages their attempts to start a conversation. However, social interaction, imitation and reinforcement alone cannot explain language learning. It fails to explain how children speak original sentences that they have never heard before. As you know, some parents, while talking to children, speak in childish language. How do then children acquire adult speech that is grammatically correct? Why do children make the same mistakes, i.e., overgeneralize and underextend terms? They never hear adults use words like run, or it'd, or call a plane a bird, or vice versa. Learning to add ed to the end of the word comes from interpreting the rules of grammar according to their understanding. This shows us that the child thinks and interprets information as she learns language. They have an inborn ability to learn language. From the above discussion, it becomes clear that the child's environment, social and cognitive skills along with her innate ability influences language development. As a part of the environment, the caregiver plays a very important role in fostering the language development of the child. Let us see how the caregiver can do this. 19.5 Fostering language development. Children who are encouraged to speak and who are listened to when they speak develop superior language abilities. You know that children learn language through an active process of speaking and listening. Therefore, both these aspects should be given importance when activities for the development of language skills are being planned. From your reading of the earlier section of this unit, you know the factors that help in language learning. If we want to foster language development, we should make verbal communication a joyful social activity for children. The conversation with them should be such that it is fun. It should not become a question and answer session which focuses on getting and giving information. There should be place for fun. The aim should not always be to teach the child something. As children tend to imitate the manner in which others speak, we must provide good examples of speech. The adult could expand the sentence so that the child becomes familiar with forms like adjectives. We must also encourage children to express themselves freely. Talking to them on topics of their interest will provide many opportunities for them to speak freely. For example, you can ask questions that are related to the day-to-day experiences of the child, like, "What did you do at home today morning? I see you have a new pencil. Who got it for you?" This will initiate a dialogue and motivate the child to take part in conversation. The questions of the child should be answered with enough attention. The caregiver should be careful not to pass judgment on what the child says while talking to her. For example, when the child asks, "Can I tell you a story?" the caregiver can probably say, "I would like to hear your story, but let us first finish this task," instead of saying, "Don't interrupt. You should wait for your turn. Can't you see that we have to finish this task first?" If she speaks like this, she will inhibit the child. To understand this better, let us read the two examples written below. In one case, this is how the conversation went between the caregiver and the child. Child: "Auntie, look, I found a feather." Teacher: "Really? How pretty. It is so soft." Child: "Yes, it is black also." Teacher: "Black." Child: "Look, here it is black, and the stick is pointed." Teacher: "Stick. Oh, I see you mean this part of the feather." Child: "It is pointed. When I press it on my hand it makes a mark." Teacher: "Do you think we can write with it?" "Maybe, make a it." Child: "Can we?" Teacher: "Come on, let's all try." In the second case, the conversation goes as follows. Child: "Look, Auntie, I found a fair hair. Teacher, yes, it's the crow's feather. It is black in color. What color is it, Amit? Child, crow's feather. Teacher, what did I say? What is the color of the feather, Amit? Child, here it's black, pointing to the black part of the feather. Teacher, we can make pens from feathers. When can we make from feathers? Child, don't know. Teacher, come, I will tell you how we can make pens from feathers. It is easy to see that there is a difference in the style of the caregivers in the two cases. The first child's responses are given importance, whereas in the second case they are ignored. Also, in the first case, the ideas build on each other and the talk flows freely and continues for longer. The essential point that comes through is that even without asking formal questions to children, learning takes place. It is important to remember that the caregiver herself will also influence the child's language. If she is angry, it will immediately be reflected in her voice. The mood of the caregiver will affect her voice, and children are sensitive to it. While talking to them, this must be kept in mind. While conversing with children, one should also be a good listener and pay attention to what the child says, as this makes the child feel comfortable and respond positively. Finally, the caregiver should also keep in mind that children enjoy rhymes, songs, and stories. These help in the development of language skills. Stories, songs, and rhymes involve the child completely. In a day's routine, there are many times when a song or rhyme can be introduced. While children are waiting for food to be served, or before beginning a new activity, a familiar rhyme will make this situation pleasant. Some songs from other cultures can also be introduced, as children find them interesting and they enjoy pronouncing new words. Children in preschool years like to listen to stories, repeat them, make their own stories, and also read picture storybooks. Stories also allow children to practice their language skills. You will read more about this in Block 5.
19.6 Speech Problems in Childhood. You have already read about the development of language from infancy to preschool years. You read about the milestones of development at various ages. Though one should not be unduly worried about slight delay in development, one should not ignore if the child's development does not follow the pattern described in the text. Delays can be considered as warning sign of speech disorders. It is important to pay special attention to any speech problem because it may be an indication or a symptom of something even more serious like brain damage, hearing loss, etc. Any delay in language development will hamper the development in other areas also, i.e., social and cognitive development. There are basically three reasons, any one of which could be the cause of a disorder. These are as follows. If the child cannot hear, she will not be able to produce the various sounds. There could be a problem with the child's vocal apparatus, i.e., the nasal passage, tongue, vocal cords, larynx, etc., or brain damage, and this could hamper sound production. An emotional problem may interfere with the child's ability to understand language or to speak it. The child may need surgical treatment, hearing aids, speech therapy, and/or help for her emotional problems. The common problems noticed in the childhood years are difficulty in articulation or pronouncing a particular sound or combination of sounds, long after others of the same age have mastered them, and stuttering or stammering. Delay in achieving milestones can also be a problem. Let us look at these to find out what the causes are and how the caregiver can help. Articulation problems. These disorders are the most common of all. Some children have problems in making a sound or combination of sounds. They may substitute one sound for another. For example, a child may substitute the sound R with one and Q with T, as in the sentences, "Give me your slipper, and quickly, give it to me," respectively. This sound substitution in words is known as lisping. Many a time, the person's tongue movements are not coordinated and problems in producing certain sounds occur. The cause of this disorder can also be a hearing problem, because of which the child cannot hear the difference between two sounds and, therefore, has a problem in producing them. Another reason could be that because of malformation of the speech organs, the child has a problem in producing a particular sound. By consulting a doctor, you can learn about the exact problem of a particular child. Although this disorder reduces the effectiveness of the person as a communicator and attracts a lot of attention from others, it is not a serious disorder. It can be corrected if it is detected and treated early. In some cases, children repeat a consonant or a vowel, I, E. They get stuck at a sound and repeat it again and again. For example, BBB ball. This is called stuttering. In other cases, there is a long pause in between the word, for example, mau, ter. This is known as stammering. The causes for both these disorders are not very well known.